Hey there, pirates. Welcome aboard the Anime No Me channel. The image of Gol D. Roger, the legendary pirate king, has always been portrayed as heroic, almost mythological. Even with his questionable actions as a pirate, the world of One Piece often presents him as a liberating, visionary figure who inspired generations. However, with the release of the SBS for Volume 112, new information casts this figure in a different light, perhaps not as noble as once believed. The revelation that Roger's crew had an official torturer, interrogator named Millet Pine completely changes the tone of the Roger Pirates' activities and raises a troubling question. Was Roger truly the hero everyone thought he was, or a true monster disguised as a legend? This theory goes beyond a simple deconstruction of Roger. It suggests that Shanks, currently an ambiguous and increasingly suspicious figure in the story's universe, was shaped and possibly corrupted by this darker side of Roger, becoming someone with much more complex intentions than he appears to have. In this part 1, we'll focus on direct evidence from the manga, SBS, and secondary data to argue that Roger and his crew operated with brutal strategic methods, and that this directly influenced Shanks' development. The most shocking detail from SBS 1 and 12 is, without a doubt, the inclusion of Millet Pine as the crew's official torturer interrogator. This in itself shifts the entire narrative. Until now, despite Roger's title as Pirate King, his crew was viewed as adventurous, curious seekers of knowledge. But the use of torture to obtain information points to something much darker. Why would such a powerful pirate need a torture specialist unless it was to extract vital information through extreme means? Even more disturbing, Millet Pine isn't described as a warrior or fighter, but as someone whose sole role was to force confessions or extract crucial data. This doesn't align with the image of a crew with pure intentions. On the contrary, it suggests that if they reached Laugh Tale and discovered the world's secrets, they may have used cruel methods to gather clues, information about poneglyphs, and the location of ancient stones. This paints Roger as a pragmatic individual who didn't hesitate to use questionable tactics to achieve his goals. Another essential point is understanding what was at stake. Roger's crew wasn't just seeking adventure. They were after the greatest secret in the world, something guarded by the gods themselves and hidden through dead languages, poneglyphs, and extinct civilizations. That alone implies this wouldn't be a peaceful journey. What if someone refused to cooperate? What if entire tribes or families, like the Kozuki, held essential secrets? Would Roger negotiate or force them? The presence of a torturer answers that question. This theory proposes that Roger, much like the celestial dragons themselves, used his power to shape the world according to his vision. The difference is he believed he was doing it for a greater good. But as we've seen time and time again in One Piece, even noble intentions can become corrupted through action. Roger may have justified all his deeds in the name of discovery, freedom, and justice, but the means used clearly suggest there were victims along the way. Shanks joined Roger's crew as a child, alongside Buggy serving as a cabin boy. And that raises the question, what does a child absorb while growing up in a crew that, beyond piracy, included interrogation and torture as part of its operations? Even if Roger was protective, Shanks was an observer. More than that, he was shaped by the crew's logic. Strength is power. Truth comes from pain. Noble goals justify any sacrifice. Throughout the series, Shanks has always been presented as a charismatic, powerful, and seemingly balanced man. But as time passes, more clues emerge that his agenda is far more mysterious than it seems. He meets secretly with the Gorosei. He prevents strategic conflicts based on his own priorities. He appears to know secrets about the Void Century, about Luffy's lineage, and yet acts as a mediator between worlds, never committing to one side. According to this theory, that ambiguity stems from his upbringing in Roger's crew. By growing up watching Roger justify cruel methods in the name of freedom, Shanks learned that there's no true good or evil-only results. This gray mentality is what makes him so hard to classify today. He can save civilians while also handing information over to gods. Another key aspect is understanding that Roger symbolized absolute freedom, but freedom, in its extreme, can mean chaos. If everything is permitted in the name of freedom, then torture, attacking civilizations, and ignoring existing order are all allowed. And that's what the Roger Pirates practiced. What may have seemed revolutionary to some was devastating to others. Shanks inherited that philosophy. He's a man who values balance, but clearly believes he can decide what should be done and who deserves to know what. That's a form of authoritarian justice, an interesting paradox that may suggest Shanks is now repeating Roger's stance, doing whatever is necessary for a supposed greater good, even if it involves dark pacts, omissions, and unilateral decisions. But hold on, this theory isn't saying that Shanks is a traditional villain. Instead, it argues that he may be the true ideological antagonist of One Piece's final arc, and that makes more sense when we look at his origins. Shanks didn't grow up in a destroyed village or an abusive home. He was shaped by Roger, the man who freed the world, but with an iron fist when necessary. And that brings us to a direct parallel: Eustace Kid versus Shanks. Kid was a brutal pirate, yet he was defeated in seconds by Shanks, who until then had been portrayed as a pacifist. The truth is, Shanks is capable of eliminating threats swiftly and strategically, and does so without hesitation, just like Roger would have. Shanks inherited Roger's sword, morals, and methods. And this might make him, by the end of the story, not the hero everyone expects, but the guardian of the current system, or even the final obstacle between Luffy and true freedom. So far, Shanks has always acted as a conservative influence on Luffy's journey. He pushes Luffy to follow his destiny, but when Luffy goes too far, he stops events like Marineford with imperial authority. This symbolic alliance, Captain-Apprentice, breaks down once we understand Roger's violent creation. Luffy represents real freedom, without moral compromises for a greater plan. Shanks represents pragmatic, controlled stability, but built on the legacy marked by Roger. The final clash isn't just physical, but philosophical. Luffy's authentic liberation against Shanks' institutional defense of the status quo. Shanks avoids unnecessary battles, delegates challenges to his subordinates, and keeps his distance from direct conflicts. This behavior fits perfectly the profile of someone raised to be a subtle strategist. He avoids direct impact, but maintains full influence, exactly as it would have been in Roger's crew, who would arrive at places to check things out, negotiate, or gather information, not necessarily conquer by force. Millet Hine represented brutal control power. Shanks represents the subtlety of symbolic control, two complementary methods of exercising power. By the end of One Piece, the main theme might not just be defeating the world government, but transforming symbols and power itself. Shanks could be the last legitimate link to Roger's plan. If Roger was indeed willing to use torture to maintain his path, Shanks might be the one who decides to complete the legacy differently, not with sword or blood, but with pact, influence, and symbolism. And depending on how this aligns with Luffy's convictions, he could ultimately become the true ideological adversary of the Age of the Sun. Looking at the symbols left by Roger, swords like Shodai Kitetsu, the Rio Poneglyph fraud, ancient walls, and the methods he used, interrogation, informants, torture, we see the crew had a clear dichotomy. Beyond their pirate pride, they exercised control and manipulation. Shanks, inheriting these symbols, may have embraced the same dichotomy. He defends freedom, but acts as the guardian of the world government's secrets. This reinforces the idea that he is the secret guardian of the world throne, at least while planning something greater or trying to prevent the world from collapsing completely due to dangerous revelations. With the data from SBS 112, we now understand that Roger's crew operated with cruel and pragmatic methods, something rarely explored until now. This, combined with Shanks' silent and controlled behavior after Roger's era, allows us to reinterpret Shanks as an heir to Roger's dark legacy, who consolidated his acts with ideas of symbolic control and institutional stability. That was today's content. We hope you liked it and want to share your opinion on the subject. Don't forget to share the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and stay amazing.